Hello, this is Chris Pratt from Eurogamer, and let's talk about Overwatch on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. Now, we've already seen plenty from Blizzard's soon-to-be actually released class-based shooter on the PC, thanks to the ongoing beta, but how well does it stack up on the consoles? This video is going to answer that by showing you some footage I captured directly from both the PS4 and Xbox One versions, along with some impressions as to what it's like playing this game using a controller rather than a mouse and keyboard. And finally, we've got an interview with Overwatch game director Jeff Kaplan, which will help answer a couple of things that only the developers themselves can tell us. Alright, let's begin with a quick comparison. Importantly, very importantly, both the Xbox One and PS4 versions appear to be running at 60 frames per second. Overwatch may not be the twitchiest first-person shooter out there, but I can't imagine playing it at anything less than that. As for the resolution, well, let's go over to the developer for that.
It's using a scaling resolution system, so if you're in optimal environment, it will be as max resolution as the system allows.
Okay.
And it looks really great and beautiful. And it maintains those most of the time. We're constantly tracking, how is the performance doing there. And then obviously if there's a lot going on at once, get 12 Zaryas in the room and all hit your ultimate at the same time, it'll scale down accordingly to make sure that it maintains at 60 frames a second.
What is the kind of the native resolution that you're going for on the two consoles?
We're trying to hit 1080.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you hitting 1080?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it scales depending on how busy things are getting on screen, which in turn helps maintain the frame rate. It's not going to look quite as sharp as the PC equivalent, but, I don't think that's a gigantic surprise. But anyway, I'm not Digital Foundry. You can make up your own mind as to whether you think this looks good enough here. What I can tell you instead is what it's like to play this game using a controller. Well, first of all, it's slower. Players don't really turn as quickly when using a controller. You can adjust the sensitivity, of course, as you'd expect, but by and large, I found that players, including myself, weren't turning with the same kind of speed you would expect on the PC beta. It felt like because of this, flanking was even more effective, with heroes like Tracer and particularly Reaper being especially deadly. With that in mind, the fact that players are a little slower to turn here and there, the gameplay itself has been tweaked slightly to compensate in comparison to the PC version. The example we were given, and I don't know if there are others aside from this, was that the turrets, both Torbjorn's and Symmetra's, have been toned down slightly. They do less damage, which gives players slightly longer to react if they walk through, say, a doorway and find a turret immediately behind them. They can have a chance to survive that. Probably a smart move, to be honest, although nobody wanted to play Torbjorn at the Hands-On event, so I'm not entirely sure how dramatic a change that really is. So yeah, there are going to be some minor gameplay tweaks to expect compared to the PC version. But when it comes to the big stuff, the updates, the patches, the new maps, the new heroes, will the consoles keep up with that?
When it comes to targeting big content updates like, a free map or a free hero, we're going to try to sync those as close as possible. Whether that blast radius is a day, 2 days, a week, we're still trying to figure that out. We have a great partnership with both Sony and Microsoft. They've been amazing for us to work with, so we're confident we'll be able to get to the point where we can shrink that blast radius as small as possible.
Okay, no concrete answer when it comes to update timing on the PS4 and Xbox One, other than as close as possible. Whilst we're talking vague answers, actually, let's try a question that I've been asking a bunch of developers since a rather surprise announcement from Microsoft earlier in the month. Whilst we're talking about the consoles themselves as well, recently we heard that Microsoft, sort of out of nowhere, started talking about the idea that they're not against the idea of cross-network play. They're not against the idea of Xbox One players playing with PC players, but also perhaps even PlayStation 4. Is that something that you would consider?
We would definitely consider. We're super open-minded, and it sounds fascinating. At this point in Overwatch's development cycle, it's unlikely that anything like that would happen for launch. We're launching on May 24th, so we just heard about this last week. So
I think most people did.
Yeah, so it was very exciting to us. We're very open-minded in terms of what does it hold for the future, but we have no immediate plans to support cross-platform play.
Okay.
We have said in the past, and I'll stand by this, we would have a big concern about PC players playing against either Xbox One or PS4 players because of the control scheme, because of the advantage of mouse and keyboard over the console controller. And we'll sort of keep an eye on what's going on with the Xbox cross-platform play and see if in the future that's something that we might integrate.
Okay, well that at least sounds promising, and I'm glad to hear that Blizzard is sticking to its guns when it comes to not allowing cross-platform matchmaking between the PC crowd and the consoles, because really, my biggest takeaway from this hands-on with both versions is that it's different playing on a controller compared to the mouse and keyboard in the PC beta. Of course it is. Heroes like Lucio, who require you to hold a button whilst wall running, or Pharah, who needs you to hold a button to hover using her jetpack. These heroes require a bit of extra thought when playing with a controller. Think about it. By default, the button press for both of these actions is A on the Xbox pad or X on the DualShock. Just think about what you're doing with your hands there. Whilst you're holding that button, it's much more difficult to aim and shoot at the same time. Thankfully, in both setups, you can customize the controls to your liking, and I think you really need to with those two characters specifically. But either way, it's a different experience. Widowmaker, the game's sniper, is arguably more difficult to use here. You can't follow a fast-moving target as easily without a mouse. You'll become reliant on aim assist as a result. And these aren't brand new issues. Console players encounter them with almost every single first-person shooter. But it's worth knowing that if you've been watching gameplay footage from the PC beta, things aren't going to be quite the same. There's going to be a different kind of metagame on the consoles, I think. Despite this, I came away impressed, you know, these are good console versions. They run well and the developers are saying a lot of the right things. I like the controller customization. I like that the Overwatch team has started thinking about smaller tweaks they can make, like that turret change, which don't drastically alter the shape of the game, but just make things a little more controller friendly. In fact, the example I gave you of Lucio and the wall running, I was speaking to a developer whilst I was playing who mentioned, actually, you know what, they're thinking of just making that a single button press that locks you onto the wall run to get around that very problem I just mentioned. Blizzard is still seen by most people as primarily a PC developer, and they are, in many ways, but they've also proven themselves on the consoles already. Diablo 3 was incredibly successful there, and I'm hoping Overwatch is going to live up to that. It's looking like it will. Alright, so far so good. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you've got any questions, please do ask in the comments below. I'll try to answer them. And yeah, if you'd like to see more from this game, from us as well, here are some things that you can click. Want to know why we like the game in the first place? I did a piece on that back in November. I think it still holds up. So if you'd like to give that a go, you can. Cheers. See you next time.